Hi there and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire. Today I wanted to show you how to create some super fun surprise slider cards. Now I created these using the newest card kit from My Favorite Things, and there are some elements in that card kit that make these surprise slider cards easy, but I'll talk about how you can do it without these elements. Okay, so I made two cards. The first is simple. It's a one-tier cake, and you pull the tab at the top and it turns into a two-tier cake. Then I thought I'd do like a stepped up version, and this one has a three-tier cake, and when you pull that little tab at the top, you have a fun little surprise that pops up. So I'm going to show you the simple one first, and then how I did the second, and these really are quite easy to do. I first wanted to show you the card kit that I'm using from My Favorite Things. It includes this 4x6 clear stamp set with a lot of birthday greetings that were great with the cards we're creating. There's also this paper pad. I think there's 24 sheets in here, and there's some beautiful summary type pattern papers. I didn't use these on today's cards, but I'm definitely saving them for future projects. There's a little bag of these discs, and I'll explain in a moment what these are. Then there is a good size stack of some of the My Favorite Thing cardstocks that are so beautiful. There's more than one sheet of each. And then there is a set of dies. They look kind of funny here, but this is what you use to build these fun cakes that you can create into a surprise slider card. Let's get started by creating the simple card first, and I have die cut the pieces of the cake from two different shades of coral cardstock. I'm using my quickie glue pen to put adhesive on the back of the icing pieces, and I'll glue that to the others. You could use any adhesive for this, but I thought the fine tip of the quickie glue pen would be perfect. So you'll see which pieces go together quite easily. They fit together like a puzzle. I'm going to go ahead and put icing on the bottom of the second tier and also on the top. I picked a smaller stamp from that stamp set that's included in the My Favorite Things card kit. I'm going to stamp that on the top tier of our cake. I'm stamping it with Versamark ink, and then I'll heat emboss it with Hero Art's white embossing powder. So this sentiment you will not see until you pull the tab on the card and it reveals this message. So I've heat set that, and it says, "Be happy, it's your day." Okay, so now I have a piece of white cardstock here. This is about 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. I'm going to put this onto a 5x5 note card. I've stamped one of the other sentiments with Versamark ink, and I'm heat setting that with gold embossing powder from Hero Arts. So I'm going to keep the rest of the card simple because I think when you have the slider card effect, it's best to have a simple card around it. Next, on that same background, I need to create a slot for the slider action to work. I decided I wanted my cake in the center of the card, so I'm going to hide that slot behind the cake. So I'm taping my little slot die that's included in the kit right in the center of the card, and I ran that through my die cut machine. This will be hidden behind the cake, but that slot is really the key to creating that sliding action. You could create your own slot with an X-Acto knife, but that die makes it super easy. Before I start to put my card together, I did decide I wanted one more thing on my cake, and that is the little candles. So I die cut a bunch of candles from white cardstock. That die is included in the kit also, and I colored them with Copic markers and glued them to the top of the cake with that same quickie glue pen. And now we're ready to put the card together. I did create a pool colored note card that's 5.5 by 5.5, and that will be ready to go as we put this card together. I also need one of those little discs or those little tokens that's included in the kit. I'm going to put one of the little tokens down towards the bottom of our open slot and put some strong adhesive on here. I'm using Ranger Multi-Medium. This is a very strong adhesive. Then I'm going to place the cake onto that so that the disc ends up on the bottom back of that cake. So I'm just going to place it right on the bottom back of the cake and hold it there and let it dry for a few minutes. And here you can see the disc on the bottom center back of the cake. Okay, so after you've let that dry completely, you can go ahead and pop it back into the little slot and just hold it right there. And then you need a tab. This die is also a part of the kit, so it cuts this tab. And you're going to glue this to the other side of the disc. Now to position it correctly, you're going to need some strong adhesive. So I'm putting some strong adhesive on this side of the disc. I'm going to take my tab and lay it down on top of it. Notice that the tab is sticking out above my paper just a little bit. So it's sticking out just a little bit. I'm centering this on my card, and I'm just going to press it and hold it and then let it dry for a few minutes. Okay, so while that is drying, I'm going to go ahead and create like a channel on the back of this card. We need some dimensional adhesive on the back of this, on both sides of these tabs, so it has like a channel for that tab to go up and down. You could use strips of double-sided tape. I'll do that in the next example, but I decided to use some craft foam. So I've put adhesive on both sides of that tab, and I'm going to put some some craft foam right onto it, right up against that tab there. Now you'll see my craft foam, of course, is too big, so I'm just going to take some scissors to cut it a little bit smaller than our background paper. So I'm just going to cut off the extra here. Again, you could use double-sided tape there if you want to. Okay, now I need to put craft foam on this other side also. So I'm going to put that down right up against the tab and then cut anything that's hanging off. Now this craft foam is a great way to add dimension to a card that will hold up when you go put it through the mail. Okay, so now on the back of our card, or on the back of this panel, we have that dimensional adhesive with the tab in the middle. Now my tab was a little too long, so I cut the bottom off, and now we're ready to put this on our card. I'm going to use some strong double-sided tape to adhere these craft foam pieces to our card. So I've put 2 strips on each of them. You could use any tape that you wanted to here. I just find that this double-sided tape from Be Creative is very easy to add and very strong, and it's great for using with craft foam. So once I've removed the release paper from the double-sided tape, I can go ahead and add this to my 5x5 card, being sure to keep that tab right in that channel that we created. Okay, so I glued it down, and check this out. You pull that little tab on the top, and your little top tier of the cake will move up and down. Now we need to glue the bottom tier on it so that it hides that top tier before you pull the panel. So I've cut 2 super thin pieces of foam tape. Any craft foam tape would work here. And I'm putting it on the edges of the bottom tier cake. So I'm just putting 2 little pieces there. And now I'll stick this on top of the cake while that cake is in the bottom position on our slider. And then I press it down, and then you'll have 1 tier looking cake, and when you pull the tab, it turns into 2 tiers. This is such a fun card to create. You could create this card without the kit by cutting your own little slot with an X-Acto knife, using something else for the disc, such as maybe a dime or something smaller that you may have like a bead, and create your own tab. But I'll tell you, the kit really makes it all easier to do. So there is my first example. This is kind of how the card was designed to work. And I have another variation I want to show you. I did decide to decorate my cake, so I put some glossy accents and some shimmer pen on the flames. And I'm using these Nuvo crystal drops to add a tiny white dot of decorative icing onto the cake. Those Nuvo pens are wonderful. You could also use liquid pearls if you have those on hand. There are many fun variations to this card. You could use some patterned papers for the cake. You could have a field day with this. But I decided to keep it simple and only use a little bit of shimmer pen and those added little dots for some accents. Okay, now I wanted to show you the second example. And this one has a big cake with this little bear popping out from it when you pull on the tab. Okay, so the bear that I used is from a birthday bear stamp set that My Favorite Things released last month. I'm stamping it onto Nina White cardstock, which is Copic marker friendly, with a black hybrid ink from My Favorite Things. That works great with Copics also. I'm not going to show all the steps of the Copic coloring because I'm really not that great at the coloring. I just did it for quick blending, but I do have my colors listed there at the top of the screen if you want to color yours the same. Okay, so now that I've colored those bears, I actually colored an extra. I did cut him out by hand so that he's ready to go. But now we need to create the 3 tiers of our cake. So you can see there's 3 tiers and they get smaller as we go. So I die cut and glued together some of the tiers from that die set I showed you before. For the top tier, I'm going to go ahead and trim off that excess icing that's kind of sticking off the top. That extra icing is there to create that card, the slider card I showed you in the last example, but we're doing it different this time. Now I created 2 bottom tiers, but I want to make one of them a little more narrow so that each tier is a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off the side of these. You could skip this if you want to and make both tiers the same size. I just thought this looked better. So after trimming that off, I'm just going to kind of make that icing a little bit smaller on the sides of this tier also. And what we end up with is 3 tiers, the one on the bottom, the one on the top, and then the one that we kind of trim down in the middle. Okay, so now we need to glue this together and make one big piece out of it. If you didn't want to do a cake, you could make them kind of popping out of a box. You can make them pop out of anything you want. Now I want to glue these tiers together and I want it to be stuck together very well. So I'm using that strong Be Creative double-sided tape. I'm putting a thin piece right at the bottom of one of the tiers and I'll stick it to the back of the other. You could use any strong adhesive here. And after I do that, I'll put some more of this tape on the top tier and stick that to the second tier. So we're just creating one giant cake here. Again, you could have, instead of the cake, you could have a box or maybe a large heart, anything you want. You just need something big here to hide the bear when the slider is closed. I also added the bottom layer of icing onto the cake. That die is also included in that set. All of those cake dies are included in it. Okay, so now we have a cake that's big enough to hide our little bear behind it. But first we have to stamp our sentiment on the cake. So I grabbed this stamp set that My Favorite Things released last month, and it has some great birthday sentiments on it. And I put one onto an acrylic block at a slight arch. So you can see it has the same kind of arch as the cake does. Stamping that with Versamark ink onto the top tier, and then I'm going to white heat emboss that. I think it would be fun to stamp other things on the cake to decorate it if you wanted to also. Okay, but I kept my cake simple, and now it's time to create the bear kind of sliding out from the top. I've cut a piece of white cardstock to 4 by 5 1/4, and that's going to be the panel that my cake goes on. So I know I want to have my bear towards the bottom of the card and then have him come out enough that he peeks out from the top of the cake. So I have my little slot die once again. I'm going to put it in the center of the card, but towards the bottom. Now this slot is not going to be big enough. When I create the slot, it won't be tall enough to let my bear slide all the way to the top of the card. But I went ahead and cut it once. But now I'm going to cut it again towards the top of the card because we need a big long slot for that bear to slide. So he slides all the way up to the top of the cake. I am making sure that my slots are close enough together that my cake hides them, and then I run it through my die cut machine again. So now I have 2 slots and I need to connect them together. So I'm just using my scissors. It doesn't look pretty, but nobody will ever see it. Again, you could hand cut that with an X-Acto knife if you wanted to. So now we have our entire slot ready to make that slider for the bear to move up and down very high on the card. Now I have a little disc here and I'm gluing it to the back center bottom of our bear, and I'll let that dry also. This will allow us to pull that bear up and down on the card. I'm going to go ahead and glue the cake to the front of the card, and this will hide our bear. I'm putting some double-sided adhesive on the 2 sides of the cake. We don't want anything in the middle because we want the bear to be able to slide up and down there. So I'm putting the bear kind of in the center there and then putting the cake right over him. Again, the adhesive is on the outside of the cake, so our bear will still be able to move. Okay, so you can see I can just move that little disc up and down, and our bear does come out far enough on the top of the cake so that he peeks through. But I noticed that my slot went way too far down. It doesn't need to go that far down, so I'm just seeing how far he can go. I'm just kind of pulling him down, and I'm going to put a little stopper on there. You don't need to do this, but I wanted to make sure that that bear didn't get lost in that little slot. So this is just a piece of scrap paper. I'm just gluing to the bottom to stop that disc from going any lower. Okay, so now I can put some strong adhesive onto the other side of the disc, and I have another pull tab that I die cut from white cardstock using that die from the My Favorite Things kit. And I'm going to glue that right there and let it dry for a while. This time I'm going to use double-sided tape to create the channel, like the barriers on both sides of that tab. So I'm putting 2 strips of double-sided tape on each side of the tab. You can see those double-sided adhesive strips go right up against the tab on both sides. I also have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card ready to go. This is a My Favorite Things Summer Splash cardstock, which is one of my absolute favorite colors. I'm going to remove the release paper and make sure that tab stays right between those double-sided strips. And then I'm going to place that carefully on the front of my card. And this is it. I mean, once you do that slot with the little disc, it's really easy to create these surprise slider cards. Just make sure that when you glue your tab onto the disc, that the tab is sticking out a little bit from the top of the white cardstock. So there you can see he pulls really far up and peeks outside of the cake. Now I know My Favorite Things is doing a bunch of examples, so I encourage you to check out their blog also for more ideas. I used some Sparkle Nouveau Crystal Drops to add a thick layer of icing onto each tier of the cake, and then I used the white Nouveau Drops that I showed you earlier to create 3 little sized dots in between each of the little scallops on the icing, just to kind of finish it off. I also added some sparkle to the balloon with my shimmer pen, and I added a little smile onto my bear with my black pen. Just adding those little touches really makes a big difference on a card that doesn't have much other stuff going on. So there you have a way to make 2 surprise slider cards. There's a lot of ways to use these dies. I hope you give this a try. Even if you don't have the kit, you can try creating it yourself. If you are interested in the supplies, I link them below in my YouTube description, and over on my blog, I'll have much more information. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can see more videos in the future if you're interested. In the middle are 2 other videos that are interactive and fun. The first shows some pop-up balloons. It's very easy to create. And the second video is a fun surprise spinner element on the inside of a card. I hope to see you back soon and have a great day.